Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really jumping into the story behind Nike, specifically the unvarnished origins told by co-founder Phil Knight in his memoir, Shoe Dog.
hmm
Our goal here isn't just another business book summary. We want to pull out those, raw, surprising moments, the stuff that shows how chaotic, how personal, how hard it really is to build something huge like Nike. It's kind of a shortcut to the human story behind the swoosh.
Exactly. And Shoe Dog is, well, it's perfect for that because it's not your typical here's the 5 steps to success kind of book. It reads much more like a novel, honestly, very introspective, sometimes almost poetic. And that gives you this unique angle on what entrepreneurship actually feels like.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Where does it all start? It's almost comically humble, right? We're talking Phil Knight just out of college on this trip around the world in, 62. He stops in Japan and basically pitches this idea on the fly, importing Japanese running shoes, Onitsuka Tigers, to the U.S. And what really gets me is that he called it his crazy idea. Not some grand vision, just a crazy idea. That says a lot about the risk, the serendipity of it all.
Oh, absolutely. And that initial phase, getting Blue Ribbon Sports off the ground, I mean, that's the classic startup grind, isn't it? The book is just filled with these gut-wrenching details. Selling shoes from the trunk of his Plymouth Valiants.
Right, at track meets.
Yeah, constantly scrambling for cash, like literally worrying about making payroll next week, warehouse problems, legal threats breathing down his neck. It's such an authentic picture of what that struggle is really like, that constant financial panic.
It really is. It's hard to square that image trunk full of shoes, maybe dodging calls from the bank with the Nike we see today. And through all that chaos, you see the importance of that early team. The butt faces, as they call themselves.
Yeah, the butt faces. Great name.
Their loyalty, their individual quirks. It really feels like that bond was what held it all together.
Because they weren't just employees, were they? It felt like this band of misfits united by this crazy idea.
And you can't talk about the early days without mentioning Bill Bowerman, Knight's old track coach at Oregon.
The co-founder, yeah. And the real innovator behind the shoe tech, right? The waffle sole.
Exactly. The story of him pouring rubber into his wife's waffle iron, it's legendary. Such a perfect example of that scrappy, make-it-work innovation.
It really is. Shows that brilliant ideas can come from, anywhere, even the kitchen.
But then things get really intense. The relationship with Onitsuka, their supplier, starts to fall apart. Pretty dramatically, actually. And that forces their hand. It leads directly to, needing their own brand.
Yeah, the birth of Nike. Which, interestingly, Knight wasn't even initially sold on the name Nike.
Right, and the swoosh logo, too. He wasn't blown away at first.
No, he famously said something like, I don't love it, but maybe it'll grow on me. For $50, I think.
$35, wasn't it? Unbelievable.
35. Even better. But yeah, this period, the early 70s, creating their own shoe, their own identity. Knight doesn't sugarcoat it at all. He talks about sheer chaos, constant anxiety, battles with banks who kept threatening to pull their funding.
Oh, the bank stories are brutal.
Yeah.
You feel his stomach churning just reading it.
Absolutely. Lawsuits flying back and forth, huge customs disputes that could have sunk them overnight. Internal uncertainty. It really makes you think, doesn't it, about the emotional toll, the psychological weight of trying to build something like that.
Definitely. He's surprisingly open about it. The self-doubt, the impact on his family life, the work-life balance struggle.
Which wasn't really a term back then, I guess. It was just life.
True. But that vulnerability, that willingness to show the fear and the doubt alongside the drive, that's what makes the book so powerful, I think.
I completely agree. It sets it apart from so many business stories that just focus on the triumphs.
And there were triumphs, obviously.
Yeah.
As Nike started to gain traction, they made some really bold moves. Signing athletes was a big one. Steve Prefontaine, the runner, that was huge for them, wasn't it? Capturing that rebellious spirit.
Huge. Prefontaine embodied that sort of anti-establishment vibe Nike was cultivating, and they never stopped pushing on innovation either. Always tinkering, always trying to make a better shoe.
But like you said, it wasn't just a straight lineup. The story gets incredibly personal.
Yeah, and this is where it becomes more than just a business memoir. Knight weaves in the personal side, the family sacrifices, and then profound loss. The death of his son, Matthew, later on. It's just heartbreakingly rendered.
It really is.
And it adds this layer of, deep humanity. It's a powerful reminder that, success doesn't insulate you from tragedy. It grounds the whole incredible journey.
So if we try to pull back and look at the big picture for, anyone listening, what are the key takeaways from digging into Knight's story this way? For me, a few things really stand out. First, this idea of perseverance over perfection.
Mhm.
He definitely didn't have it all figured out. It was trial, error, grit.
Absolutely. Just keep going.
Yeah. Second, the power of loyalty and teamwork. That core group, the Buttfaces, their bond was like foundational. More family than company, maybe.
Felt that way.
Third, just constant risk and resilience. Yeah. Facing down banks, lawsuits, customs. You see this incredible survival instinct.
Almost went under multiple times.
And finally, maybe the most surprising is the self-doubt and reflection. He wasn't afraid to show that he questioned himself, that he wasn't always sure.
And building on that, I think why this story resonates, why this deep dive feels so compelling, is down to a few things in the book itself. It's just so emotionally honest. You get the fears, the failures, the flaws. It's not a polished PR piece.
No, definitely not.
Then there's the character depth. People like Jeff Johnson, the first full-time employee, or Bob Woodell, who was in a wheelchair. They feel like real complex people, not just names on an org chart.
Totally. You feel like you know them.
And the cinematic narration. Knight really knows how to tell a story. Even descriptions of, like, contract negotiations have tension and emotion. It feels dramatic.
Yeah, it really pulls you in. Now, it's always good practice, I think, to acknowledge what a source doesn't cover, right? So
Yeah.
what are the limitations here? If you read Shoe Dog, what perspectives are you not getting?
That's a really important point. It's a memoir, so inherently it's one person's perspective. So first, you get a limited external perspective. It's all through Knight's eyes. You don't really know how competitors saw them, or maybe even how some employees felt beyond his close circle.
Right, it's his story.
Exactly. Second, the timeline is quite specific. It's post-1980 skimmed over. The book basically wraps up right after Nike goes public in December 1980.
So no Michael Jordan. Yeah. No 90s dominance.
Nope. None of that later, massive growth, globalization, the Jordan effect. It's all beyond the scope of this particular book.
Okay.
And third, and this is a significant point some critics raise, there's a limited focus on social impact. The book doesn't really delve into the broader controversies that came later, like issues around manufacturing, sweatshop labor, or Nike's role in global capitalism.
Right.
Knight consciously chose to focus on those founding years, that specific narrative arc. So it's vital context for you to have, but it's just not what this deep dive based on the source is about.
Understood. So wrapping this up, the real value here, I think, isn't a simple how-to guide. It's this incredibly human look at the messy, difficult, often terrifying reality of building something meaningful. It's about identity and fear and just pure stubborn belief.
Well said. And maybe a final thought for you to consider. How does this kind of deeply personal, almost vulnerable account of building a global giant stack up against that standard image we have of a titan of industry? What does Phil Knight's story, told this way, suggest about what really drives entrepreneurship? Maybe it's something more complex, more human than just the bottom line or the final product we see on the